Honorable m.a.Sumanthiran, you have 11 minutes.
Thank you, Presiding Member, for the opportunity to say a few words at this debate on the disaster that befell this country 2 years ago when MV Express Pearl caught fire and sank off the coast of Sri Lanka. But before I get to that point, I wish to remind ourselves, as has been done in the House since yesterday and today as well, that last year, around this time, the country was going through an upheaval, an aragalaya. And I heard moments ago the Chief Government Whip saying that they had nothing against the peaceful protesters, but it was only against those who resorted to violence and attacked members of parliament and others. And he repeatedly said he had no complaint against the peaceful protesters. Now, how did the peaceful protest that had been going on for more than a month become violent? That's a crucial question. What happened on the 9th of May? On the 9th of May, the protests were still peaceful until, and I'm glad former President Mahinda Rajapaksa is here in the House when I say this, until people who had gathered at temple trees to meet him, after the meeting, those very people rushed to Golface and beat up the peaceful protesters. That's when the violence started. Everyone knows that. Members from the government ranks are also saying it was peaceful. President Ranil Wickremesinghe even tweeted around this time last year saying, if the government attacks peaceful protesters like this, I will stop helping the government with regard to the economic recovery. All know that. But to this day, no one of them have been apprehended except one person, I believe, today or yesterday. So that is when violence started. No point saying there were political opponents who were behind the violence. That was counter-violence. After you sent your goons from your house to go and attack peaceful protesters, yes, there was some counter-violence. We condemn both. We have consistently condemned both. We have condemned the violence, we have condemned the counter-violence. But it's important to note and have on record as to who started the violence. Now, when this debate goes on to the matters with regarding the ship, I want to say one more thing. That whole aragalaya, the peaceful protest, was to make changes. People were disgusted with what was happening in the country. The status quo with regard to political power and how that was being used. That is why they wanted then incumbent Gotabaya Rajapaksa to leave. Second request was for the 20th Amendment to be repealed. Third, for the executive presidency to be abolished. Now, I have heard many people say, including the president, that the peaceful protest was hijacked by some people. Maybe it was hijacked or it seemed to have been hijacked at that time. But the real hijackers of the Aragale are still those in the government, led by President Ranil Wickremesinghe. The whole people's movement for change was hijacked and turned around with eyewash amendments, 21st Amendment, a mockery of an election for the president, and the same status quo continues. That's the hijacking of the people's movement for change. But I want to say this, that kind of action will not last. When a people decide that they want change, it will happen. It might take time, but it will happen. With regard to this debate, it seems to me I should have started speaking at least an hour ago, but it seems to me that some members in the House are more concerned about saying they were not responsible. I am not responsible. No, you are responsible. You know, this forum is being used to justify their little involvement in this whole thing. The disaster that has befallen this country as a result of the ship burning and sinking is far more than that. The environmental damage to the country will take decades, if not another century. The plastic pellets that were released to the sea, it will take 500 to 1,000 years for it to dissolve. This is perhaps the greatest man-made environmental disaster that has happened to the country. And all we are doing is throwing a little mud at this one, then the compliment is returned, and that's what is happening. With regard to the issue itself, I want to say a few things. That is, this legal action issue will not be affected by this debate. And so I thank the Honourable Speaker for the decision made and the party leaders for taking that decision. I must also put on record as a legal practitioner, when there is a choice of forum, when you have more than one forum to which you can go for relief, there are various factors that come into that consideration, and all of that cannot be revealed. And I agree with the Honourable Minister for Justice. There are certain issues that can't be...
Honourable Member, you have another 2 more minutes.
Thank you. That can't be made public. It has been decided, for good reason or bad, that you go to the court in Singapore. I'm glad about that. The court in Singapore is bound to be far more impartial and more professional. But the question that arises is, in a matter like this, Honourable Rasamanikam raised this yesterday, and I want to raise it again today. In a matter such as this commercial damages issue, you have no problem going to a foreign court. But in a very serious matter, where the victims of injustice after 14 years are still waiting for justice and have no confidence in the local process, have been asking for international involvement, you steadfastly refuse. For what reason? You want to present a bill to establish a TRC, a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Any TRC process must be victim-centered. It cannot succeed, you can't even start without the victims being satisfied with the process. And here the victims are saying, all right, there were 2 sides to a conflict. One side can't decide. One side can't control the proceedings. That is not independent. For it to be independent, it must be impartial. And if it was to be impartial, it must necessarily be international. So I'm raising this question again. நான் இந்த கேள்வியை இந்த கடைசி சில நிமிடங்கள் தமிழிலே பேச அனுமதியுங்கள். இன்றையிலே இருந்து ஒரு வார காலத்துக்குள்ளே தான் 2009ஆம் ஆண்டு மிக மோசமான படுகொலைகள் அரசாங்கத்தாலே அரங்கேற்றப்பட்டது. முள்ளிவாய்க்கால் நிலைவேந்தலுக்கு முள்ளிவாய்க்கால் நிலைவேந்தலுக்கு நாங்கள் செல்லுகிற இந்த கடைசி வாரத்திலே நான் இந்த கேள்வியை எழுப்புகிறேன். இன்றைக்கும் சர்வதேச நீதியை எதிர்பார்த்து காத்திருக்கிற மக்களுக்கு நாங்கள் சர்வதேசத்தை பக்கம் தலை திருப்பவே மாட்டோம். இந்த நாட்டு சட்டத்திட்டங்களுக்கு ஏற்ப இந்த நாட்டு நீதிமன்றங்கள் ஊடாகத்தான் விடை கொடுப்போம் என்று சொல்லி ஒரு விடையும் கொடுக்காமல் இழுத்தடிக்கிற நீங்கள் நட்ட ஈடுக்காக நீங்கள் வெளிநாட்டு நீதிமன்றத்துக்கு போயிருக்கிறீர்கள். அது சர்வதேச நீதிமன்றம் கிடையாது, இன்னொரு நாட்டு நீதிமன்றத்துக்கு போயிருக்கிறீர்கள். இது உங்களுடைய இனவாத முகத்தை இன்றைக்கு உலகத்துக்கு எடுத்து காட்டி இருக்கிறது. இன்றைக்கு நாங்கள் ஜனாதிபதி போடு பேச போகிற போதும் இந்த டிஆர்சி பற்றி பேசுவோம். அதில் நாங்கள் சொல்லவிருக்கிற விடயம், இது சர்வதேச பொறிமுறையாக இருந்தால் மட்டும்தான் இதனால் பாதிக்கப்பட்டவர்களுக்கு நீதி கிடைக்குமே தவிர வேறு எந்த வழியிலையும் இது சரிப்பட்டு வராது என்பதாகும். தேங்க்யூ.